welcome to the Majorly Undecided podcast. I'm your host, Kat Klaus, and on today's episode, I'm excited to talk to a financial planner. And while immediately you might think, oh, we're going to be talking about money and spreadsheets, our guest on today's show has a very unusual story in how his journey began, where it went, and these three amazing paths that he had the opportunity to go down that all converged into the perfect path for him. And so we're going to talk about theater a little bit, we're going to talk about computer science a little bit, and then we're going to talk about business and finance. I'm really excited to bring this interview to you. So our guest, without much ado, is someone who I believe is an amazing mentor. He's an incredible professional and an incredible artist. John Sampson is our guest today. He's a certified financial planner. And before he decided to go into the career path that he's on now, he was a graduate of California State University, Bakersfield, and the University of San Diego. He's had a career as a professional actor, specializing in Shakespeare, and a career as a computer consultant and IT director. As a computer consultant in San Diego and New York City, he worked with businesses ranging from small 5-person shops up to Fortune 500 companies. He's still an avid computer geek and donates his services to numerous nonprofits. You might also occasionally see him back on the stage as time permits. I can say from seeing him in various shows, he is a SAG actor, a Screen Actors Guild equity member, and an incredible actor to watch on stage. He's also an amazing financial planner. So I'm excited to bring this interview to you today. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really excited to hear more about your story.
Thank you, Kat, and I appreciate the invitation and really everything that you do for the community and for that, the future generation, as it were. You do amazing work. Thank you.
Thanks. So tell us a little bit more about John in high school. Did you know what you wanted to do when you grew up?
I did, but it's not what I'm doing. I had a very clear idea in high school. I was in junior ROTC, the Air Force Junior ROTC at BHS, and so I was pretty uptight. I had wanted to be a CPA attorney. I was a computer geek. I was pretty sure I was mostly left-brained at that time. And so I had it all figured out. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was going to have 10 years or whatever of college and university ahead of me. So I'm going to go to Cal State. They've got a great business department, get that bachelor's done, then go on, get my master's, then go on, get my law degree, then go on and do, X, Y, and Z. But there were some fractures and seeds that were planted in high school. So I was also in choir, and you're falling with a wrong crowd sometimes when you're with those theater and choir folks. So that was the first little fracture, because I did take a very circuitous route to where I currently am, even though it's not too far off from where I thought I would be at the time.
So you took a little bit of choir, got a little bit of theater, and then what was your declared major at Cal State Bakersfield? What did you first declare as?
Finance and computer science. So I was actually a double major. And so that was what I went in my freshman year. I was probably those double major, maybe even through my junior year, although it was at the end of my freshman year that I fell into theater. And that's where it all went downhill. No, it was a wonderful experience, actually, and it was absolutely amazing. But all of my friends had left, pretty much, had gone away to college and university elsewhere. And I was kind of lonely. So I had a little theater experience and thought, well, I'm going to audition for this play here at Cal State and see what happens there. The rest, as they say, is history. I just fell down that vortex, that black hole, and got more and more and more and more involved with it. And I actually tried to juggle 3 majors for a while. I tried to keep the finance and computer science and just throw theater on top of it and try to juggle all 3. Didn't end up with 3 degrees, though.
To juggle with rehearsals and tech weeks, and that's a lot.
And that is the thing, theater especially does take a lot of time because it's about this group of people that have this shared vision, and how are we going to make this story happen, and that takes a lot of time and energy. And it's oftentimes more fun than finance or computer science, depending. I still find those fun too.
Well, as theater, I'm also a theater person, so theater to me is a little bit more fun than spreadsheets.
It is.
Some people think that spreadsheets are more fun than theater.
I probably put them on parody. Actually, I do like a good spreadsheet.
So from there, so you started doing shows, and then did you do any internships or anything like that in college?
No, I really didn't. I grew up in the back office of my parents' investment advisory and financial planning firm. So I had a pretty good understanding of what the business life was, which I think was one reason why it was really my primary focus through high school, is what I mostly knew. So I still worked there through high school and even through college at Cal State Bakersfield. So I had a pretty good job in a business and in finance, but I didn't do any internships as far as theater went.
So you were more involved in acting, not as much in tech or directing or things like that.
Correct. I did enjoy tech a lot because I am kind of a left brain techno nerd. I enjoy the board design. I enjoy lighting. I enjoy building. I enjoy all of it. But I did. It was the performance aspect that I think I had a little bit more talent and luck at, and so was able to kind of ride that train for a while.
So your parents coming from a finance background, what did your parents think about you doing theater in college?
They became very supportive, but it was their own little journey. It wasn't a long journey, but I remember initially, I think my parents' initial reaction was, well, you're going to pay for college then. if you're not going to have a viable career afterwards, we're not going to just throw our money down the tube. That quickly changed just because, well, I'm not sure exactly why. They're just very wonderful, supportive people. So I think they just, there's knee-jerk reactions, and then there's, as you start to chew on it and see what theater really is, since they're not artistic necessarily theater people, that's not where they come from. They learned a lot through my experience in the training and the professional realm of theater.
What kind of skills did you gain doing theater in college?
What kind of skills didn't I gain? I think theater is one of those things, when I left professional theater in New York and I came back and I started interviewing for quote unquote real jobs. And I found a pretty good way of putting it, that a lot of people think theater and a theater training or a theater degree is really just, dancing around, jumping around in tights or something and, being dramatic. And that's really not the case. It is a psychology degree. It has study in psychology and history and communication and English and writing, and even more importantly, this ability to learn to deal with sometimes large personalities in a cohesive way and get this group of cats herded in the right direction. It's pretty incredible. I guess it'd be considered a lot of the soft skills from that standpoint, but I think there's a lot of hard skills in there as well. So yeah, I use my skills from theater absolutely every single day in multiple ways, as you know.
So you're studying theater in college, and then at some point you decide to go to grad school. What did that decision look like?
As I got more and more into theater, and as I realized I enjoyed it, and like I said, I had some luck and a certain amount of skill at it and enjoyment. I think probably around my junior, maybe senior year, I was still trying to juggle all three majors. I thought I'm going to audition for some MFA programs out there and see what happens. I kind of say, riding the train. I'll ride it until it either stops or I decide I don't like the destination and I'll jump off. And that's really what happened. I auditioned for a few grad schools and didn't get in. I got into a couple, and they weren't my first choice. So I thought, well, I'll wait another year and see. And I got into the Old Globe Theater, which is a joint venture with the University of San Diego down in San Diego, and which is a fantastic, amazing program. And I was very, very, very excited about that. So I decided, all right, I'm going to just wrap this up. If I had stayed in undergrad, probably another year, maybe a year and a half, I think I would have gotten the other two bachelors as well. I was close-ish. But the train was moving and it was leaving the station, keeping on going. So I continued on. So I just wrapped it up with my theater degree and headed on down to San Diego to get my master's in classical theater.
So what did you learn through your master's? Because the MFA is a little bit different than doing theater in undergrad, right? It's more specialized. And
It is. And especially Cal State has a really wonderful theater department. And it was unique because I came out of that with training and some good basic skills. But I think one of the most important aspects that I came out of undergrad with was practical experience. I was thrown into roles that I really had no right even attempting at that skill level or at that range. And so, in fact, that was part of my spiel to the graduate schools was like I've kind of experimented, I've played, I've gotten to get on stage, I've gotten to do all these things, but I need more tools now. I need to hone it. I have this block of marble. Really, let's get these fine tools to carve something more beautiful. And so, from a theater standpoint, it was much more specialized. It was much more technique driven. In theater, as you know, there's two types of broad categories of acting of method or technique. Method being from the inside out. Do I really feel it? And if I feel it enough, it'll show. And the technique is more classically trained, which is, hey, you know what? I don't sing because I'm happy. I'm happy because I sing. And so if you get your body to work in certain ways, it'll come across and you'll feel it. So I learned a lot of those techniques.
so then after grad school, what was your plan?
Again, riding the train. So I was very fortunate. I had a fair number of agents that were interested in me, and so I was able to. We do a showcase in LA and in New York, and so in New York was where I had the most interest, which makes sense. It was more of a classically training program anyway. And so I was able to interview a few different agents myself, and I picked the one that I really liked. And I actually had two agents. I had a legit agent, which is the agents for, for theater, for movies. And then I had a commercial agent as well. And so the plan was to just keep on keeping on, see how far you could take it, right? So I had just gotten married. I met my wife down in grad school. We got married, moved to New York. Talk about a jolt to just your life and everything that or feel stability in. So we were in New York for a few years, and I had some success there, and but I didn't really enjoy it, and that was really the key for me. Is I didn't really enjoy the instability, the unknown. I am left-brained majority, and I like to be able to plan for the future. Acting is not a good career choice if you need to be able to plan with any kind of certainty for the future.
How did you come to that realization? Because that's a really big realization for an actor to have when you're in New York and you're quote unquote living the dream, right? You're auditioning and you're getting some parts and things like that. But to have that realization, and then there's that moment of, well, now what do I do? spent all this time, and I think that a lot of students worry about that. I've spent all this time on this one thing. Now what?
Well, there's a few thoughts I have on that. One, the idea of sunk costs. That's a fallacy in a way. You can't really think about what time you put into something necessarily. As long as, for me, it's as long as everything that I did and wanted to do, I felt was improving me as a person in some way or another. And if I'm improving as a person through this process, then I'm coming out on the other side. The time was well spent. Even though I'm now in business, and maybe it would have been ultimately better from some standpoints if I had taken a direct path, I don't think from a personal standpoint that I'd be happy. I think I'd be playing much more of the what if game. Well, what if I had done computers? What if I had done theater? What if I had done these things? Who would I be? And I don't think I would be as good at communicating, as comfortable as I am, public speaking, as comfortable as a lot of these other skills that it provided really are. If I hadn't gone through that. For me, to your question as to what really changed, a lot of actors that I met, and I got to work with some wonderful professional actors through this process. There was a couple components there. One was I noticed that it seemed like with working with these professional actors, that for about every year past about the age 45, for every year past that age that they didn't make it and become, get that pilot that got picked up or became, really successful or wealthy in some way or another, that it was an exponential curve into bitterness and unhappiness. And so that was planted, like this idea of what success is as an actor, sort of reset those goalposts to a certain extent. And then also saying, looking out in the future, because I'm a planner, to look out and say, how old do I want to be before I say, hey, this isn't right, or I don't want to do this? The second part of that is I really wasn't happy. I was kind of miserable in this living the dream lifestyle. I needed more security. I didn't enjoy. I loved having the job. I loved working on the character. I didn't like getting the job. I didn't like the auditioning process. My wife is wonderful at that. She loves the hunt, of trying to get it. I didn't, and so consequently, I was just really pretty unhappy.
So you may have had this realization, and then what was the next move?
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty. I'm a computer geek, as I said, and so I did computer consulting back in New York. That's one of the ways we paid the bills. It was very nice because it was flexible from that standpoint. Didn't need to wait tables, which is also great for actors because it could be pretty flexible. So computers was a pretty natural journey for me. And we put some feelers out, and Jennifer had an opportunity maybe to take a teaching gig in Florida, and there was a couple of other opportunities around. But I'm from Bakersfield. Jennifer is not, my wife. And so we decided to come to Bakersfield because I have a pretty good support system here, and I knew people. And I had a couple of interviews, and I really put my feelers out more for computer-based jobs, and I ended up getting a job as the director of IT, information technology, for a local construction and architecture firm, and we were off to the races from that standpoint. Kind of putting our roots down here in Bakersfield, back in Bakersfield for me, newly for her.
So you took that position, and which is completely different from what you've been doing, right? And then you ventured more into financial planning. So tell us more about that journey.
Yeah, so being back in Bakersfield, as I mentioned earlier, my parents owned and operated their own independent firm, a financial planning and investment advisory firm, and sold that, and were managing local wirehouse Merrill Lynch. And through our conversations, it sort of I guess it was always a possibility. It was always on my radar, right? If it's a kind of a family practice, a family business, those things don't just come completely out of blue. But the conversation started to get a little bit more serious on that, saying, all right, I think I was about 30 or so at the time. Like, what is the next step? Now that you've decided to not ride that theater train any longer, do you really want to ride the computer train and the IT and the management train from that standpoint? Or, hey, there's this other track over here that we kind of like and is pretty good. And so, being the geek that I am, I put together a pretty elaborate spreadsheet with all sorts of pro con lists. I'm dead serious. I could probably pull it up right now. And it's got weightings. So I put a value of like how important each of these components are. And I had a whole thing. And it came out that really, for me, the financial planning and investment advisory track made a lot of sense from a lot of standpoints. I got to utilize those analytical left brain technical skills that I have with computers and the management and the business ish background that I have there. But you have to marry it with this communication and these interpersonal skills because it's all client facing, it's all client based. So I can't just be holed up with spreadsheets and analysis all day long. I've got to be on the phone. I've got to be talking to people. I've got to instill confidence in people and communicate. Things like in a pandemic, what and the volatility of the market here. What does that mean for their futures? I'm a planner. I've always been a planner, and so being able to put that into practice for other people has been also very gratifying.
So it's kind of amazing that you found this like perfect marriage of both. You kind of pursued, like you said, 3 tracks, right? And then eventually all 3 of those tracks kind of just came together.
It is kind of interesting. Yeah. And I think I could probably argue that if I hadn't done theater, I probably would still be a financial advisor, likely in some way, because I think it was a natural place for me to end up because I'm very close with my family and it just makes sense. But I don't think, like I said, I wouldn't be nearly as happy from the standpoint of the what ifs, but I also don't think I'd be nearly as effective. I think I would very easily. I'm more of an introvert. I'm more of the person that can get whole. I'm your quintessential computer geek. Put me with a computer down in the basement. I don't need windows. I don't need human interaction for weeks. Just throw bread and water, and I'm fine. That's that I needed to learn to kind of exercise those other components of my personality in order to have interpersonal relationships.
Tell us more of what your day-to-day looks like. Like, what does a financial planner really do? Are you there 9 to 5? Are you there 5 in the morning until 2 o'clock, when the market opens? So for students who aren't very familiar with financial planning, what does that look like?
It varies. And of course, right now, with everything that's going on, it's a little different. In general, in normal times, every day can be a little different. And that's one of the other things that I really like about this career is that you never really get bored. You can kind of build your practice however you want. There's a lot of flexibility in it. And so for me, the market opens at 6:30, but we're not brokers from the standpoint that we're doing a lot of buy, sell, do this, time in the market. No, it's long-term investment. It really is more financial planning, fee-based, where we're fiduciaries, and so we put our the financial well-being and interests of our clients above our own legally, as well as morally and ethically. So, in general, I'm not too much of a morning person. But I still like to get in the office by 6:30 to 7:30. I do kind of my daily update of what's happening in the global politics, economy, any news that's going to head out there. I might look at the models and portfolios that we manage to see if there's any necessary changes that need to be made. And then it's a lot of phone calls and meetings. So try to try to have lots of meetings through the day, whether they're with prospective clients and introducing our services to those folks, or going through a financial plan and initial discovery with somebody, and really trying to get to the bottom of what makes their life tick and what their ultimate goals and successes are. What does an ideal retirement look like for you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? And really, people don't always have those answers just at the tip of their tongue. So going through that process, or delivering a plan, or going over portfolios and performance reports, or just having conversations, we become kind of the financial cornerstone of a lot of our clients too. They end up coming to us first for a lot of financial questions. Hey, should I lease or buy this car? Or hey, we're thinking of selling this property. What does that do to our plan? Hey, what do you think about this business plan? Does this work? Does this not work? So kind of a little bit of everything.
And it seems like all of those things really play into theater skills and, the computer science skills and, being able to analyze data, but then also being able to help create this vision of the future and, why you should plan for it, but then also the constant change. Everything's always changing.
Right. And taking those analytical, the analysis and the data that the computer spits out and that I can, manipulate, and then turning it into a story. And making it a story that is meaningful and impactful to the clients and the individual that I'm sitting across. That's where that psychology, being able to do this character development on clients to a certain extent, to be able to figure out who they are and what they need, is important, and a skill that I think I would not have without theater.
What advice do you have for students who are undecided or have these 3 tracks that they're looking at, and also who might not have as supportive parents to, give that freedom?
That is a challenge if you don't have a support system or supportive parents specifically. I think the biggest advice I have, I think there are very few people that know exactly what they want to be for the next, their entire life. I think a lot of engineers oftentimes are more of that type, not necessarily, but I would say if you're going into college, focus less on the major and focus more on improving yourself as a human being, improving your skill sets. I lean into my weaknesses. I always have tried to, at least. If I'm uncomfortable with something, that probably means I need to be doing it more, because it's something I'm not good at. I find myself, as I think is natural for us, to want to do the things we're already good at. That can be useful when you want to be a professional in that area, but always focus on rounding yourself out as just a complete human being that can interact in the world in many different ways. And not only will that, I think, provide depth and complexity and breadth to what you end up doing, it will also allow you to be much more adaptable and flexible when the inevitable hits. The only constant is change, right? I mean, you cannot assume that everything stays the same indefinitely. So if you know that things are going to change on you in one way or another, and especially if you're already not completely focused on what you want to be, you pretty much are building in a certain amount of change right there. Give yourself the best tool set possibly to be able to adapt to that change.
A couple more questions. So what's your favorite part about your job?
It changes. Again, I think, for me, I like a good spreadsheet, and I really do enjoy just sitting and cranking out data. I love analyzing portfolios. I think, though, for me, one of the most gratifying components of my job is providing peace of mind to clients. Their finances, the world, money is all kind of scary and unknown. And when you're going from a lifetime of bringing home a paycheck to 20, 30 years of not bringing home a paycheck, but living off of Social Security and maybe some pensions, and then the wealth that you have stored and need to live off of now, that's a hard transition. And so to be able to provide a plan for people to where they feel confident and they don't wake up every night scared that they're going to run out of money or that they don't know what's going to happen. It's an incredibly gratifying component of the job.
What's your least favorite?
Probably the fact, it's also not a bad thing, but it is a bad thing. It's that fact that it's always different. The world's always different. My day is always different. There's a lot to do. That can create a little too much chaos at times. For me, it can create. I like a certain amount of adaptability or change, um, but it's can get a little overwhelming. I'm not always great at shifting gears. I kind of inertia, if I'm doing something, I like to do something. So to set up and have to jump from being buried in analysis to then going on the phone to then meeting with a prospect and jumping around is can be challenging. It's also fun. So it's kind of a double-edged thing there.
If you had, if there's any students out there that wanted to get into financial planning or learn more about it, what would be your advice to them? Should they, reach out for internships with other financial planners, or is there, things online that they can visit? What would be your advice?
I think internships are a fantastic path there because with financial planning and investment advice, it's very, very, very different. You can have many different personalities that are successful in this industry and they do it all different ways. So there's a lot of flexibility there, but that also means that there's a lot of options, which can be overwhelming. So there's a fair amount of research you need to do. Are you someone that is very, very interested in stock picking and just the numbers side of things? And boy, I want to manage portfolios, and I think that's really where my talent is. Or the planning side of things. No, I really want to help people build a financial plan to help them navigate this unknown course in front of them. Or anywhere in between, really. So I think that reaching out to uh, professionals, finding internships, just doing broad research and getting a little bit more focus and understanding and clarity in the area that you like. I've personally met with a number of Cal State students or different high schoolers that think they're interested in it, and I'm always willing to share some of my time, with them and sitting down and kind of guiding them and trying to help explore and dissect what it is that they're really looking to accomplish.
Last question. Do you still do theater?
It's been a while. When we first moved back, I did a couple of shows. Jennifer, my wife, is an amazingly talented director. She got out of the acting side of things and really moved into the direction side of things. She's fantastic. She was doing there for a while. She has chronic illness, and that's kind of derailed her career in a way. But she roped me into a couple of shows here and there. And if she were still doing that directing, I would probably get roped into one or two. I miss it. I just don't have time. We've got a 7-year-old daughter. We've got, lots of things going on in our life, and it's very challenging to make theater happen with so much going on, as you very well know.
Especially it's harkening back to, that age conversation about, do I have the time, and that definition of success in theater, very much.
Right. We've talked about doing like staged readings or things that have less of an investment in time in the upfront, and being able to just, because there's something that would still scratch that itch for me, being able to lose yourself in a character and to kind of exercise those muscles. I think is clearly it was a big part of my life, and it was a professional career for me for a while, and yeah, I miss it. But I don't see it happening anytime soon either.
Especially right now.
Right.
Right. John, thank you so much for sharing your story and all of your insight. I know our students really appreciate it. We're going to put a lot in the show notes, including the programs that you mentioned, a little bit more about your company, and the skills for financial planning and the options there. So thank you so much. This was great. And it is very rare that you meet someone who is left and right brained.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure how right-brained I really am. I think I just was able to trick people and approach right-brained problems through a left-brained lens.
Which is also really important.
Maybe that's true. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I think, like I said at the beginning, everything that you do for our community and just for people that are unsure as to what to do with their lives and these important steps of college in front of them, it's just invaluable.
Thank you, John.
Good work.
I want to thank John again for sharing his incredible story with us. I think that a lot of teenagers think that you have to stay on one path, one set of tracks. And as you can hear from John's experiences, he had 3 different tracks that have all kind of converged into one in the end. And all the skills and lessons he learned along the way have only made him better at what he does now. John, thank you so much for joining us. As always, there'll be more information here in the show notes, including John's bio, a little bit more about the University of San Diego program, and a little bit more about certified financial planners and how you can get into that. If you have any questions or you want us to feature an episode, please reach out to us, info@majorlyundecided.com. You might notice too that we have refreshened the website. You can now access the show notes directly on our website, majorlyundecided.com. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time.